I'm joined by Dr. Ryan Gottfredson. Did I get that right?
You got it.
Look at that, man. I just sounded it out. It's so perfect. It's just like it's spelled. Exactly. So
add another win. Add another win for your day.
You know what? I'll take the smallest ones that I can possibly get because they need to add up. I promise you that much. So,
all right.
Dr. Gottfredson is a learning and development coach, Dr. Ph.D., and he talks about leadership. And he's a very well-renowned researcher in the field of leadership and individual development. I believe human resources is in there somewhere. But as entrepreneurs, we don't usually find ourselves dealing with HR very often. I mean, that's why I want to be an entrepreneur, is because I don't have HR to answer to. So, I mean, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, it's great to take some of these skill sets that we need from that perspective, and we can apply it to dealing with customers or dealing with vendors, or even just the way we structure our content as content creators each and every day by posting on Facebook and Twitter and all the great spots that you can post on. We can take some of this that we learn from Dr. Gottfredson today and apply that so that it reaches possibly even a broader audience. Now, I'm putting words in his mouth here, so I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to say, Dr. Gottfredson, thank you so very much for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, I have too, honestly. Once I think the booking agent that reached out to me sent me your credentials, and I was like, wow, this guy is amazing. I don't even know what all we're going to talk about, but there's so much to choose from, and you bring so much to the table that I just hoped and prayed that I'd get you on, and here you are. So,
no, it's awesome. And I hope what happens with our time together, both for you and for whoever listens in, is that this is an opportunity to awaken to ourselves. And because one of the things that I've learned is the more that we can awaken to ourselves, the more empowered we can be to be successful with whatever we're doing, and particularly with regards to entrepreneurship.
You know, I think that sometimes awakening to ourselves is something that we think we have done, but we only awaken to the negativity. We only awaken to our shortcomings. You know, oh, if I just did this better, I'd make more sales. Or if I did this better, I'd have more followers. Or and we just go down that laundry list of negativity. What are some of the things that you can help us with so that when we do wake up and we do awaken to ourselves, we awaken to that positivity?
So let me give you a line that I use quite frequently when I go around and speak, and let me know what you think about it.
Okay.
So here's a line. We think that our thinking is the best way to think. Would you agree?
Definitely. Everybody thinks that the way they're thinking is the right way.
Right? But just because we think that our thinking is the best way to think doesn't necessarily mean that our thinking is the best way to think.
Correct.
And so if we can awaken to that idea, then we can improve our thinking. But it's only until we awaken to that idea that we are empowered to do so. I think that everybody thinks that their thinking is the best way to think, or else we would think differently than how we currently think. We would actively change it. And so what I have found in my research and the research of others is that 90% of our thinking, feeling, judging, and acting is driven by our non-conscious automatic processes. In other words, most of what we do, when we do it, we are essentially on autopilot.
Sure.
And to make this even worse is what I found. I have a personal mindset assessment that I'm sure we'll talk about here, but through the assessment, having thousands of people take it, 95% of people, their autopilot has improper instruments or coordinates. In other words, they're not necessarily headed in the direction that is best suited for their success. And so if we can awaken people to these non-conscious automatic processes that is guiding how they think, feel, and act, then we could either help them improve their non-conscious automatic processes, or as a whole, make them more conscious and therefore more effective in everything that they do.
So what are some of the things that we could do to recognize that we are operating in a sense of unconscious thought per se? You know, I know that whenever we excel at something, no matter what it is, whether it's our own consciousness or whether we're thinking about something or whether we're performing an action, we generally perform that action best when you're not thinking about it. You know, it's like as a kid, you want to show mom and dad something that you learned how to do. Oh, look, Dad, I learned how to play the guitar. And he goes, tang. And you know that that's not how it sounded before mom and dad came in there, right? It sounded like Stairway to Heaven or whatever it was. I don't know. But when mom and dad show up, now you're thinking about it. And now you're nervous and you're having to walk yourself through the chords, and it just fails miserably. And I think that's what we find ourselves doing a lot of the times. So how can we recognize it when we are operating in a subconscious manner and capitalize on that?
Yeah, and I'm going to play off of the analogy that you gave. So when you're learning the guitar, that takes time to learn it. And really what you're doing when you're practicing the guitar is you're creating neural pathways within your brain that is conducive to certain notes. So when you see a certain note on the page, you know where to put your fingers. And over lots and lots of practice, you strengthen those neural connections in your brain to make it more second nature. And here's the thing. So the way that I think about these non-conscious automatic processes that drive our thinking, feeling, and acting is that they are our mindsets. Our mindsets are what drive how we think, feel, and act. They paint the world in a certain color that is unique to us based upon our mindset. And how we developed our mindsets is very similar to somebody who's learning how to play the guitar. Is over time and experiences, we develop certain neural pathways in our mind that cause us to see situations in a specific way. For example, some people, when they come across challenge or failure, they see it as something to avoid. But other people see challenge and failure as opportunities to learn and grow. So what dictates how they see the different situations they encounter are these mindsets. And so that's largely where I focus, and that's I feel like it's my mission is to help people awaken to their mindsets, because if once they can awaken, then they could do something about it. But the problem is when I go around and I speak, I ask people, well, you all know the word mindsets, and it's probably part of your vocabulary. But do you know what specific mindsets you need to have in order to be successful in your life, work, and leadership? And so maybe I'll throw it at you. Do you happen to know any, Larry? I'll put you on the spot.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm supposed to be the host. This is supposed to be my show where I'm cool. You know, everybody thinks I have all the answers. No, they know I don't have all the answers. That's why I bring on folks like you to help give us the answers. As far as some of I'll tell you one of the things that I know is wrong that I have always struggled with. I mean, as far back as I can remember, is an imposter syndrome. You know, yep. I think if I go out there and you probably just saw it right there. That's why, you know, I backed off of the fact that you asked me the question, right, and put me on the spot. And I didn't want to start going into this explanation because then I'm like, I'm talking to a Ph.D. here. He's going to know I'm kind of blowing smoke, right? But it's that way in everything that I've ever done. I've always been tentative to take that step, to put myself in a position where I can actually be questioned and I actually have to justify my position, and not just justify it, but I have to be able to follow through and prove it. And I know that that particular mindset is a major hurdle for me each and every day. And it's definitely a subconscious feeling. I mean, I don't sit here and consciously go, you know what? I'm not going to release that book that I wrote because I'm afraid somebody's going to make fun of it. I managed to fight through it and do things like that. But at the same time, it's still right there. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's holding me back. And it always has, no matter what it was that I was trying to do. So I know that's not a successful one.
No, so that's great. What you're identifying is a self-limiting belief. And that's if we can identify the self-limiting beliefs that we have, that's part of this process of awakening to our mindsets. And so you're talking about there's negative mindsets and there's positive mindsets. And so here's the problem that I have with this and why I'm doing what I'm doing is because if we understand that our mindsets drive our thinking, learning, and behavior, but we can't talk about them in a way that we identify specific mindsets, we're powerless to improve our mindsets.
Sure.
But if we put labels to these mindsets, now we could do something about it, because we could now look inward and say, what are my mindsets? what mindsets do I need to have, and how do I go from where I am now to where I need to be in order to be more successful? And so that's one of the things that I think maybe we could talk about is what are these different mindsets, and then how do we assess them within ourselves? Do you care if we kind of go in that direction?
No, that'd be great. You mentioned the assessment, and I'm kind of curious about that. I know that I read that you were a consultant with Gallup at one time. Are you still with Gallup or no?
No, I'm not with Gallup. So where I'm at is I'm a leadership professor at Cal State Fullerton. I joined the faculty in 2014, was there for a couple of years. And I took a 1-year leave of absence to do some consulting work with Gallup, which is great because I got into these organizations. We're looking at how managers in organizations could be more effective so that they could better engage their employees. But after a year, I thought, well, this is great, but I missed academia. So I went back to Cal State Fullerton. And then when I went back, I've started up my own consulting and speaking business, primarily looking at mindsets and how working with entrepreneurs, with business leaders about improving their effectiveness through a focus on their mindsets. And then, as you mentioned, the primary tool that I use for this awakening process is this mindset assessment. So if anybody is interested in it, it's a free assessment. They could go online to my website, ryangottfredson.com, or they could text my mindsets to 44222, and they'll get a link for the assessment. It's a 7-minute assessment, and then it comes with a comprehensive and individualized mindset report across the different mindsets that we're going to be talking about.
Oh, that's cool. Only 7 minutes. I think everybody's got 7 minutes they could spare to go out and kind of get some insight into themselves. You know, the reason I was asking about Gallup is that a friend of mine and also a former guest on the show was Gallup's.
Yeah, I heard that podcast. It was great.
You did? Okay, so you heard Brent. Yes, Brent.
Yep.
I've known him for way too long. He knows way too much about me. But when I saw that you were, at one time consulting with Gallup, I thought, oh, man, that's perfect right there, with Brent coming on as the Strength Finders. And he has an assessment as well. So
Yep.
are these assessments, I know that the Gallup assessment is very in-depth and takes a lot more than 7 minutes. Would you be able to kind of skim over some of the things that the assessment provides, some of the information that it provides?
Yeah, and let me put it into context with
Sure.
the Gallup Strengths perspective. And I love the Gallup Strengths perspective. It's fantastic. And it's an additional way that we can awaken to ourselves. So the way that Gallup typically thinks about individual strengths is that these are things about us that we can't necessarily change. We can improve by enhancing our knowledge and skills in the areas of our strengths, but there's some areas where we don't have strengths, and our ability to improve in these areas of weaknesses are quite limited. And so this is more of a natural talent type perspective about ourselves. And I think it's important to know what our natural talents are, and that's great. Where the mindsets come in is we could think about our different personal attributes that range on a continuum of stability. So these talents and strengths, according to Gallup, are rather stable. But then there's things about us like our emotions that are very unstable. So those could change kind of moment to moment, right? So our mindsets fall right in the middle. These are moderately stable traits about ourselves. And it's important to recognize that they're moderately stable because it means that these are things that we can change. And that if we do change them, they have a tendency to hang around for quite a while, which is a good thing. So the strengths perspective is largely, how do I manage around my strengths? And because you can't necessarily change your strengths, your ability to adjust them is limited. But when we focus on our mindsets, and this is why I love focusing on mindsets, is it not only tells us something about ourselves, but also tells us or suggests that we could do something about this. So if there's something that is a little bit more negative when it comes to our mindsets, we need to recognize that that's something that isn't permanent, and it's something that we can develop to improve ourselves. So to me, the mindset perspective is just a little bit more actionable in terms of personal development than the strengths perspective is.
Sure.
And I think both are valuable, and I don't need to, I suggest everybody take both assessments.
Sure. The more we can learn about ourselves, obviously, the better off we're going to be, whether it's with stabilized strengths or whether it's from an emotional perspective. And I think most people understand that emotionally, we're very adaptable. why are there so many therapists out there, right? If we're not emotionally malleable and shapeable, right? So I think it's pretty clear to see the differentiation between the two. So again, no need to really delve into it too much, but we can take your 7-minute assessment. And what do you do in response to the assessment, and how can we work together to maximize the effectiveness of taking that assessment?
Yeah. So, I mean, one is I think you can maximize your effectiveness just by taking it, because this starts that awakening process. And what happens when individuals take the assessment is I've got 4 sets of mindsets, and all of these mindsets, or each set of mindsets, ranges on a continuum from negative to positive. And so it helps people, 1, identify the labels to these mindsets. 2, it then puts them and gives them a score of where they stand along this continuum relative to the thousands of others who have taken this assessment. And so across these 4 sets, they can kind of see where they stand relative to others. And then there's information that helps them understand these mindsets, but then also improve their mindsets if that's something that they want to invest in.
So you said something that interested me, and I'm wondering, do the results of the assessments, you mentioned that people can compare themselves to the thousands of others that have taken the assessment. Do the results of the assessment, are they dynamic, meaning that do they evolve as more people take the tests? Or is it static and updated maybe once a year? Or how do we know the current ranking of where I may be compared with others?
I was adjusting the figures on a monthly basis just to make sure that it was accurate based upon the data. The last time I did it, the last couple times, I really haven't seen any movement in terms of the quartile breakdowns. And so I believe that what is there is an accurate representation, but it is something that I'll go back now probably about every year and just make sure it's that way. But once you get to a certain amount of people that have taken it, it takes a lot to change it.
Sure, definitely. So what are the things that you see on the assessment? You mentioned that there are 4 core principles that are identified there. I don't know if principle was the word that you used, but I can't remember it. So if you would, tell us what we're looking at there. Break those down for us and tell us how we can use those in our journey towards our emotional awakenings.
Yeah, for sure. So the first set of mindsets here is the difference between fixed mindsets and growth mindsets. So when we have a fixed mindset, we believe that ourselves and others are unable to change our natural talents, abilities, and intelligence. But when we have a growth mindset, we believe that we and others can change our talents, abilities, and intelligence. And what research has found, about 50% of the population has more of a fixed mindset, and the other half has more of a growth mindset. And where this comes to play is largely around how people approach challenge and failure. So, Larry, if you have a fixed mindset, meaning you don't believe that you can change, and you fail, how are you left to interpret that?
Well, I expected to fail. I didn't expect any difference. I knew the results. I knew where I was at. I didn't believe I could change, so I failed. And it's like, that's what I expected.
And so really part of what you're doing is you're internalizing that failure. So if I don't believe that I can change and I fail, then I'm kind of left to say I'm a failure.
Oh, sure. 100%.
And so those with the fixed mindset, they are primarily focused on looking good because they want to avoid failure at all costs. So they avoid challenges. When things require effort, then they're more likely to back away from it. But those with the growth mindset, because they believe that they can grow and develop, when they hit challenge and failure, they see it as an opportunity to learn and grow. And they identify with the idea that success takes effort. And success means working through challenges. And so when we talk about entrepreneurial success, my guess is entrepreneurs that see challenge and failure as something to avoid, and other entrepreneurs that see challenge and failure as something to learn from. And ultimately, who's going to be more successful is the one that learns from their challenges and failures, as opposed to those who are just seeking to avoid challenge and failure.
Well, yeah, and you open it, you react to them openly. You just hug those failures. It's like, great, this is an opportunity. how did I fail? Why did I fail? And what can I do to avoid this failure going forward? You just accept it. It's part of it. It's all part of the game, especially when we're talking entrepreneurship. More businesses fail by far than ever succeed. You know, becoming a Gary Vaynerchuk, for instance, is the odds are so minute. It's just, you're going to fail. If that's your goal, you're going to fail. You're going to fail, and you're going to fail, and you're going to fail. Oh, you succeeded there. Oh, you succeeded there. Oh, you're going to fail again. And it's just that pattern. But each of those failures, that's not the end of the road. You didn't permanently fail.
And I mean, my guess is, I mean, you've written a book on podcasting.
Correct.
And so my guess is, probably hundreds of podcasters who have started up, but after a couple of failures or things went bad, they just said, "Oh, it's not for me. I'm not doing podcasting." But then you probably look back on your own path to where you've come to now. You think, man, I messed up a few places and I surely would have done things differently. But despite that, and almost because of those things, I'm now at where I'm now because I learned from those failures.
Sure, 100%.
I didn't see those as indicative of I'm a crappy podcaster. As you saw those as, I need to have these experiences in order to get to where I want to go with regards to my goals around my business.
You know, and I still know I fail just about every show. There's somewhere that I goof along the way. Sometimes I'll edit it out if I can. But if I can, I just have to accept it and move on with it, right? Let that be there. Just because I had the audacity to write a book doesn't mean I am the end-all be-all or I know everything there is to know about podcasting. I am improving every day. Or I try to. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I try to. But you just have to accept that and continue along that path and continue to evolve. You know, nothing's overnight, guys. Nothing. And if it seems like it's overnight, you just don't know the backstory.
And that gets us into the second set of mindsets. So
Okay,
that's
cool.
a perfect segue. So the second set of mindsets is the difference between closed and open mindsets. So when we have a closed mindset, we're closed to the ideas and suggestions of others. And when we have an open mindset, we're open to the ideas and suggestions of others. And we're willing to take those seriously. So again, to kind of tie this back into entrepreneurial success, is the entrepreneurs that are going to be successful are the ones who they recognize that they don't have all the answers and they want to think as optimally as possible. And so they seek out the advice and perspective of other people, and they're willing to take that advice seriously and implement it into their business.
No, I think that's great. Having the humility to take that advice and not take it as an insult. I think that's a skill, honestly. I think it's a skill that evolves over time and just with experience. It's so easy to take advice as a personal insult when really they're going, you know what you're doing is great, but maybe if you just did this. Now, one of the things that I struggle with is someone may be doing that. They may be providing this just a little insight, but the way they present it did not come across as just a nice little nudge in the right direction. It came across as, I do it this way. You suck. I'm awesome. You're ugly. I'm hot. All that good stuff. And just stop what you're doing because you're doing it wrong. I can definitely latch onto that faster than I can latch on to the fact that, oh, they're just giving me some advice. Okay. So what's some of the techniques that we could use to help ourselves grasp what they're saying, you know, as advice, as opposed to an insult or some sort of degrading comment?
Yeah, and let me use that to segue into the next set of mindsets.
Man, see how I'm a great podcaster. I just give you two segues in a row. This is awesome.
Man, you are lining it up. So another set of mindsets is the difference between inward mindsets and outward mindsets. So when we have an inward mindset, we see ourselves as being more valuable and important than other people, and hence we see them as objects. But when we have an outward mindset, we see ourselves or others on equal footing as ourselves, that their feelings are just as important as our feelings. And so we see them as who they are, which is valuable people. We see them as partners. And this is really critical, particularly when it comes to the feedback that we receive, is do we see the people giving us these feedback as objects, or do we see them as people? And do we value their ideas as such? And are you familiar with Brené Brown?
I am not.
Okay, Brené Brown's a sociologist. I love her stuff, but she focuses on a really interesting topic that I think affects everybody, and that is shame. And one of the things that she's found in her research is that, or she asks a question, which is, do you think in general that people are doing the best that they can? And in my classes that I teach, I ask this question on the first day of class. And what I find is that 90% of my students say that in general, people are not doing the best that they can. But what Brené Brown has found is that when you say, if you think in general that people aren't doing the best that they can, you have a tendency to struggle with perfectionism. And let me give you an example of how this shows up. So I don't know how common it is in the area where you live, but it's pretty common for me to pull up to a street corner and there's a homeless person standing there.
Sure.
And so when I see, and I'm ashamed to admit this, but for much of my life, when I would see a homeless person standing there asking for money or food or whatever it might be, the thought that came into my mind was, this person is not doing the best they can. And then, so I get rather critical of that person. What are you doing standing there? You could spend this time trying to get a job or working somewhere. And so when I see them as an object or less important than me, then I become rather critical. But when I see them as a person, now I'm left to ask the question, and I think that they're doing the best that they can. Then I ask the question, what in the world has happened that has led you to believe that this is the best way to live? See, now that when I see them as doing their best, it allows me now to be very sympathetic to their position and much more empathetic, and I'm going to be more likely to help them. And so to tie this back to the feedback is what we've got to recognize when people are giving us feedback, and it may even be critical feedback. If we take the approach that they are trying the best that they can, we're going to be more willing to stomach the feedback, even if it isn't given in the most emotionally intelligent way. But we got to try to figure out a way to take the kernels out of there that are necessary for us to learn and grow.
Yeah, you make a very, very valid point, and I think that's where, at least I know I struggle, is allowing myself to grow in that type of an environment, especially when it comes to peers. Because how do you look at not even really a peer, someone that you look as a superior? You know, like somebody that's been, for instance, podcasting forever. Okay, mm-hmm. I have a tendency to get starstruck, even though these people aren't stars per se. You know, but I know who they are. They've been podcasting since 2004. They were one of the first ones to have a podcast, and I'm in the same room with them. And I'm going, oh my God, I want to ask them a question so bad. But I'm afraid of what they'll say, right? Yep. And so if they say something bad, I'm just crushed. It just destroys me. And I'm so afraid to even engage in a conversation because I'm afraid that I'm going to get my fragile little feelings hurt. And I am very fragile. I may weigh 300 pounds and I'm 6'4", but I'm fragile. I'm very fragile. So how do we do that, man? How can we focus on just taking the advice for what it is? And I tell you what, I'm going to turn sideways and I'm going to put my feet up and I'm going to get on the couch, okay? And I'm going to let you analyze me. No, I'm kidding. I'm not trying to turn this into a personal therapy session, but I know I'm not the only one that has these problems, right? That faces these exact same problems. So I'm just curious. Give us something actionable that we can do to take this to the next level, and then we'll start wrapping it up because I've already kept you over your time. 30 to 45 minutes. We're a little bit over 30 minutes so far, and I don't want to keep you too long, although I'm loving the conversation.
No, this is great. I think this is all about just changing our perspective. We're talking about mindsets. So we got to change our perspective about critical feedback. And it really starts with awakening to this. And so, Larry, I kind of get the sense that when we have a mindset that isn't the most positive, we kind of wrestle, we get a little uncomfortable with it because we kind of recognize that we don't have the best mindset and that there is a better way to see things. But now we've got to make the effort to try to improve. And so, Larry, what you've done thus far in our time together is you've we've given you a language to think about mindsets.
Right.
You've kind of awakened to a certain degree of where you are on this continuum, in this particular case, from closed to open. And now that we kind of identify where you're at and then where you need to go, now you can become empowered to do something about it.
Sure.
So now we could start to engage in interventions or doing things that allow us to rewire our brain to think more positively. So let me just give you a couple of sources or individuals who might enjoy some sources around this particular closed and open idea. One source is, I think it's actually the best business book that I've ever read, and it's called Creativity, Inc. It's by Ed Catmull. And he was the president of Pixar Animation. And then when Disney bought out Pixar, he became the president of Disney Animation as well. Okay. And the whole book is about how do you create a culture where innovation and creativity thrive? And he points out is you've got to have this culture where you can engage in candor, which is this idea that we could speak up without fear of repercussions. And so he talks about the value of in order for that to happen, you've got to have these open mindsets. Another book is called Principles, and it's written by Ray Dalio. So Ray Dalio is the founder of Bridgewater Associates, the largest hedge fund of all time. And maybe let me share with you a quote from Ray Dalio in his book that I think is really powerful. So he says, "You, like me, probably don't know everything you need to know and would be wise to embrace that fact. If you can think for yourself while being open-minded in a clear-headed way to find out what is best for you to do, and if you can summon up the courage to do it, you will make the most of your life. If you can't do that, you should reflect on why that is, because that's most likely your greatest impediment to getting more out of what you want in life." And so this idea that we shy away from feedback and the ideas of others is maybe what's getting in the way of our success. And so if we could summon up the courage, which it takes courage and it takes vulnerability, and then we can be more successful with it. And part of this is what we've talked about thus far is 3 of the 4 sets of mindsets. And what you could see is they kind of interplay off of each other. So what we're suggesting is you need to have a growth mindset, an open mindset, and an outward mindset. But even if you have an open mindset and an outward mindset, if you have a fixed mindset, you're putting a cap on your success. You see, so I think that this is one of the powers of focusing on multiple different types of mindsets. Sure. Is it allows us to get a deeper look at ourselves and really a broader look at ourselves and how we see the world, so that we can see the world in a much more positive and a way that is much more conducive to success.
Awesome. Now, I got to tell you, though, that I'm curious, what's the 4th?
So good. We could go through this one quickly.
No, I'm in no hurry if you're not. So, I mean,
okay.
let's just do it, man.
All right. So the 4th set is the difference between prevention mindsets and promotion mindsets. When we have a prevention mindset, we're trying not to fail. But when we have a promotion mindset, we're trying to win. And to kind of drive home these points, I want to compare this to a ship captain that's out in the middle of the ocean. So a ship captain, if that ship captain has a prevention mindset, their number one goal is to not sink. And because their number one goal is to not sink, they're focused on avoiding problems. They don't want to take any risks. They want to maintain the status quo because ultimately they want to stay afloat. But those with the promotion mindset, it's not like they don't want to sink, because they don't, but their number one priority is getting to a specific destination. Thus, they anticipate problems. They are willing to brave the winds and the currents of the sea in order to get to a destination of their choosing. So they're willing to take risks. And so the difference between these 2 mindsets is that when the people that have a prevention mindset, they get blown about by the winds and the currents of the sea, and they end up in a destination not of their own proactive design. But it's only those with a promotion mindset that come up with a clear purpose, a clear destination that allows them to brave these winds and the currents in order to accomplish their goals. And so the difference here is when you have a prevention mindset, you're largely the passenger in your life. when you have the promotion mindset, you're much more the driver of your life. And let me just give you a personal example that I think relates to entrepreneurship is,
Sure.
in all honesty, I feel like most of my adult life, I've had a prevention mindset. I mean, I feel like I've done some pretty cool stuff in the sense that I got a Ph.D. But for the most part, I think one of the reasons why I got a Ph.D. was because I wanted to avoid problems. I wanted a stable job with a good work-life balance. I wanted to be able to support my family. So I'm trying to avoid failure. And if you would have asked me 2 years ago if I ever would have started up my own business, I would have said you're crazy, because I saw starting up my own business as being really risky. But then I kind of sat back and I looked at my life and I thought, I am not where I thought I would be at my age. So since I'm not there and I want to get there, I need to change how I operate. And I need to develop much more of this promotion mindset. And in doing so, and in improving my mindset, I became willing to start up my own business. It was significant financial investment, which I was really scared about to begin with. But I thought, if I want to make something here, I've got to try to get through the winds and the currents of the sea, instead of seeing those clouds and that storm on the horizon and think, I'm just going to steer clear there. Because in order to get to our ultimate goals, we've got to get through the storms of life. And so we've got to take the approach that you can avoid them. So you've got to go through them. And that's the idea of the promotion mindset.
Kind of similar to the captain of the Titanic, maybe. Sorry, I was sitting here wondering the whole time, is that a question on the assessment? What kind of captain was on the Titanic?
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah, it was a little tacky, sorry. But anyways, so no, I'm glad that we got to cover all four of those. And yeah. I agree with you 100%. The promotion mindset is definitely something that I think entrepreneurs need to be able to latch onto, and they need to be able to run with, because you're going to have upsets. You're going to have failures. You're going to have setbacks. But the only real failure, right, is stopping what you're doing and giving up and not taking the next step and persevering through the challenges and the obstacles. Anybody that quits is never going to finish, right? I just made that up. I don't think that's a real statement, but
it sounds pretty good. You should copyright it.
Okay, I'll do that. Yep. Oh, man. Well, if you would, go ahead and give us your contact information. Tell us about your website. Tell us we can find you on social media, books, anything like that you want to plug real quick, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, for sure. So contact me through my website, ryangottfredson.com. You can get the mindset assessment there. My email address is there. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, just Ryan Gottfredson. I'm pretty easy to connect with. I'm in the process of writing a book on all of this. And so if this is something that you want to be in the loop on the book when that comes out, in fact, I'm talking to a publisher on Wednesday, so crossing my fingers.
Nice.
Hopefully that we can get that out soon and help people further awaken to their mindsets. Because again, like I said, I think the more we can awaken to how we see the world, the more empowered we become to operate effectively within the world and improve our life, work, and leadership.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for sharing your information with us today. I greatly appreciate it. I had a great time. I feel motivated. I feel like I need to take that next step. I was kind of kicking rocks because honestly, I'm sitting here working on a course for podcasting that I'm going to be selling on Udemy, and it's taken me a lot longer than I thought it would. But, I've stepped back and I've looked at it and I went, wow, okay, the book, I did that really, really quick. I joined a mastermind and we knocked it out in 30 days. And I actually wrote the book in 20 days because I had to start over on day 10 because I read what I had and I was like, this sounds more like a autobiography than a podcasting book, right? It's like I was writing Dear Diary. The way to podcast is, and it was horrible. But anyways, so the book's great. It tells you exactly what you need, but it's not really what I'm really, really proud of. And I don't want this course to end up the same way. But I'm finding so many challenges with the course. Finding time to write it, finding time to edit it, finding time to like what I'm even putting together because I hear my own voice, and I go, that sounded bad. And I mean, down to the most minute little inflection of a tone of a particular word. I go, man, I got to redo it. It is so horrible to sit there and fight that. You know what I mean? But I got to take that next step. I just have to finish it. So this message rings so true in that regard, if nothing else, for me right now. And I'm going to get it done. I promise. I'm going to.
You'll do it. So one of the things that I'm hearing, which I love about your approach, is that you're trying to do the right thing as opposed to the easy thing.
Oh, definitely. 100%.
But at the same time, you need to, if we go back to the prevention and promotion mindsets, is when you have that promotion mindset, that we're headed towards the destination and we're not trying to avoid failure. So, those little things like your inflection or whatever, don't let those things hold you up, because ultimately, you're going to be the only one that recognizes it. Nobody else will.
I kind of feel like a one-legged duck. I'm just swimming around and around and around in circles. So, well, again, thank you very much. Let's wrap this up, and I will let you go. I really appreciate it. And everybody, thank you for listening. Once again, this has been another awesome episode of the Readily Random Podcast. If you have any questions or concerns, or you just want to reach out, touch base, you know where you can find me, and we'll just take it from there. So thank you very much. I appreciate you listening. Everybody take care. Bye-bye.